All right, let's talk about a phrase you've probably heard thrown around a lot, community development. And yeah, it sounds simple enough, doesn't it? But trust me, it's way more than just a feel-good buzzword. Today, we're going to peel back the layers and turn this kind of vague idea into an actual blueprint for making a difference.
I mean, just look at this word cloud. You can see how the word community is connected to everything. People, social, sustainable, it's the whole shebang. But a bunch of powerful words on a screen, that's not a plan. So what does it really take to build a stronger community? What are we actually doing when we say we're developing one? That's the big question we're tackling.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can even think about changing or improving a community, we all need to be on the same page about what a community actually is. And it's not just about, a zip code or a dot on a map. It's a whole mix of things. A group of people, sure, but also a shared space, a shared time, and, this is key, the social glue that holds them together. Think of this as our working definition as we move forward.
All right, now this is where things get really interesting. See, to truly get what it takes to help a community grow, we first have to kind of unlearn a few things. We all have these cozy, maybe even romantic ideas about what communities are like. So let's go ahead and bust some of those common myths. Okay, let's start with the big one. This idea that communities are always these peaceful, unified places where everyone gets along. Like a feel-good movie. But the reality? Come on, it's way messier than that. Real communities are full of different people, with different opinions, and surprise, they sometimes disagree. Conflict isn't a sign of failure, it's just normal. And actually acknowledging that is step one.
And what about this one? This is huge. It's so easy to look at tradition and think, oh, that's old-fashioned, it's holding things back. But that's just not the whole story. In fact, a lot of the time, those traditional practices are packed with generations of wisdom and local knowledge. They're a source of incredible strength and resilience. It's not an obstacle to progress. It's often the very foundation you need to build on.
And the last myth we're busting today, this idea that a community's needs are super obvious, that an outsider can just swoop in, take one look, and say, aha, I know exactly what you need. Nope, that's a huge mistake. Needs, goals, dreams, they're different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. The only way to truly understand what's needed is to actually talk to people, to listen, and to involve them in the process from the very beginning. Okay, so now that we've cleared away some of that clutter, we have a much clearer, more realistic picture of what a community is. So let's build on that. Let's get to the heart of it. What exactly do we mean by community development? Well, here's a classic definition, and it comes from the United Nations way back in 1954. The key phrase here is united with. It's about the people's own efforts being combined with support from government authorities. It's a partnership, right? And the goal is huge, improving pretty much everything, economic, social, and cultural life. But now, check this out. Let's look at a different take, this one from a Nigerian perspective. The emphasis here shifts, and it's a really powerful shift. It's all about the people organizing themselves and relying first and foremost on their own resources. See the difference? Government isn't the partner. It's a backup. This is a much more grassroots, self-reliant vision of how change happens.
And I love this diagram because it perfectly shows that community development isn't, a one-and-done project. It's not a straight line with a finish. It's a cycle. It's continuous. You start by understanding, then you engage and empower, connect and build, design and deliver, and then, and this part is so important, you reflect and celebrate. And then you loop right back around. The work is never really finished.
Okay, so we know the what and the why, but the how, well, that's a different story. And it turns out that how you try to help a community depends almost entirely on the theoretical lens you're looking through. Yeah, that's right. The theory you start with, it changes absolutely everything.
And this is the crucial part. Your approach completely depends on your starting point. Take a look at this table. If you're wearing consensus glasses, you're basically buying into that first myth we busted, that everyone's on the same page. But if you put on the pluralist glasses, you see a more realistic picture. Lots of different groups, competing interests, and the need for collaboration. And then there's the structuralist lens, which looks even deeper. It's not just about different groups, it's about unequal power. The goal here isn't just collaboration, it's about challenging those power structures head-on. You can see how the lens you pick completely shapes your game plan. I know this can all sound a little academic, a bit abstract, so let's bring it down to earth. Let's look at a real-world example from Nigeria and see how these theories have very, very real consequences. So I want to ask you, how much does this theoretical stuff actually matter on the ground? I mean, when people just need clean water, who cares about theory, right? Well, it turns out it can be the difference between a project that works and one that completely falls apart.
Okay, let's look at the Graboko Water Project. When it started, the organizers went with that consensus model. They thought, hey, we'll just talk to the community leaders, they represent everyone. Well, that was a big mistake. Pretty soon, people were accusing them of favoritism, saying they were being left out. So what did they do? They switched gears. They adopted a pluralist model. They held open meetings, they invited everyone to the table, and they let all the different groups have their say. And the result? A project that was way more fair, way more successful, and actually worked for the whole community. The theory they chose literally changed everything.
So after all that, busting myths, getting our definitions straight, looking at different theories, what's the bottom line? Where does this all leave us? Well, it really boils down to a few core principles that should guide any effective development work.
Think of these as the guiding stars. First, participation. And this doesn't just mean inviting people to a meeting. It means giving them a real seat at the table, a real voice in decisions. Then there's empowerment. This is all about building a community's ability to take charge of its own future. Next up, equity and social justice. Simply put, is it fair? Does everyone have access? Are the benefits being shared? And finally, sustainability. Is this change built to last, or is it going to disappear the second the outside help leaves? These four things, they're absolutely critical.
And that really brings us to the final question. And this one is for you. It's easy to think of community development as something that happens in far-off places, right? But these principles we just talked about, participation, empowerment, equity, they're not just for big international projects. They're for our own neighborhoods, our own workplaces, our own towns. So the question is, how could we start applying these ideas right where we live? What would that look like? You might be surprised. The first step could be a lot smaller than you think.